3, 2, 1. I'm Jane Garrity, and welcome to my podcast. A Gift of Time is my memoir. I share openly my journey through healing childhood and generational trauma, PTSD, and my spiritual awakening. Please follow, subscribe, and share my story. If it is resonating with you, it will resonate with the people that you know. Episode 6, 2023. I backed the truck into a small campsite along the river in Telluride, underneath a grouping of tall pines. We had been on the road most of the day, traveling from Pagosa Springs through Durango and then up Highway 45. We found a U.S. Forest Service site that was tucked in right below the town along the San Miguel River. We've been camping with the dog since we first met in 2019, so we have the setup and pack-out process pretty nailed down. First, it's establishing the places where we can tie up the dogs and make sure they still have room to roam around, and then getting them hooked up. While my husband sets up the site outside with chairs, dog beds, gathering sticks and wood, I'm inside the camper opening up windows, laying out dog blankets, turning on the Bluetooth speakers, and within a few minutes, we're officially camping. 2 days prior, we packed up the truck camper and with enough supplies for a weeks-long journey through the southern half of Colorado. After moving to Colorado from New Hampshire in 21, we learned that we no longer wanted to tow a large camper. We were more interested in being in off-grid spots, tucked away in the mountains, or in the high desert with mobility, ease, and solitude, versus plugging in at campgrounds with others. And we wanted the freedom to explore. Overlanding is a self-reliant travel style where the journey is the goal, not the destination. People experience it in many different ways, via camper vans, car camping, tent camping off the back of motorcycles, and truck campers. Our goal is to continue learning about nature, wildlife, other cultures, and ecosystems by exploring an off-grid lifestyle whenever our schedules would allow it. This is our preferred way of experiencing life outside the matrix. I love our truck camper. It has given me the freedom I've always longed for, with the ability to travel, hike, and sleep wherever my spirit moves me. I was driving this trip because my husband had hurt his foot. I was nervous at first, but I learned quickly the handling of the large, top-heavy truck around narrow mountain passes at high elevation, having to slow down to a crawl for elevated hairpin turns while the wind gusts had us swaying as if in a boat on choppy water. Heading into 2023, I was alcohol-free and still learning my way around it, like a toddler finding their footing. I found it a little easier than I was expecting. Maybe all the moderation I had been trying helped as a prerequisite. The more challenging part was actually becoming aware of myself and my feelings and my emotional wounds, the reasons behind the why. I was forced to go within, now with my toolbox of random self-help books, weird, innate, spiritual intuition that I was still learning, and get to work and connecting with myself. I wasn't expecting to have to navigate and relearn to connect with my body and also how to be fully present. I initially had a few therapy sessions with a professional who specializes in addiction. It wasn't an easy thing to do, admitting that I had an addiction in the first place, but I was eager to lift up the cover and take a peek and to see why it kept boiling over. No one ever mentions the constant courage it takes to look under the cover and into ourselves. That cover is a nice shield, and it feels safe, comforting to have it on, like a warm blanket and a good book. But my blanket was looking worn and pilled, threading in places, dirty with stains. And the book I was reading was spineless and had pages ripped out, and it was the same story I had been reading for decades. I was forced to find new ways to cope, and I became hungry for it. I began searching books, podcasts, social media for information on how to fix myself by reframing my brain. Prior to giving up alcohol for good, I had listened to Matthew Perry's book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Every day on my walk, I would listen to him tell a story, and it was relatable. He spoke so freely and openly about his childhood trauma and his addiction, and it forced me to realize that that could be me. When I had visited my doctor and told her that I gave up alcohol, she thought it was amazing and told me that it was the number one toxic substance that we can eliminate to improve our overall health, especially as a postmenopausal woman. I asked her why all I crave now was sugar, and she told me that sugar gives us a dopamine hit that the brain is searching for because it's no longer getting it from alcohol. She said to eat the sugar, it's way healthier than the alcohol, and it will subside over time. Hearing from Matthew Perry, and now my doctor, educating me about dopamine and how addiction happens so slowly, over time, only validated my decision to give it up for good. I learned that when our brains get that dopamine hit, it's like a snowball rolling down a long hill. And with each turn, more snow accumulates so that one drink easily becomes 2, and then 3 and 4, and so on, until I needed more and more to get that one hit of dopamine my brain craved. Alcohol use changes our brain's dopamine receptors, and it leaves us needing more and more of that source to get that hit. The target keeps moving. For me, once I understood the science behind it all, it helped me to reframe my brain around it. I understand that not everyone has the same experience, and I've lost friends, family, and loved ones because of alcoholism and addiction, and I'm not undermining anyone else's experience. I'm only sharing mine. There is a point when I believe that it does become a disease that is completely preventable. We understand the why, unresolved trauma, and the science, dopamine receptors, behind it. This journey in our truck camper along southern Colorado came at the perfect time that year. I had been 8 months sober by now and was able to feel the positive changes in my body and my relationships. I didn't know then that the challenges I was facing at work had become a common theme, a broken record, a loop. I had finally found a position and role that I loved, where I was able to be creative, present data, develop strategic plans, and watch my planted seeds grow. And much like that snowball rolling down the hill, I saw major behavior changes with my manager. I would get that dreadful feeling in my gut while driving to the office, a bad taste in my mouth, wondering which version of himself he would be that day, always having a guard up now. It started out with him saying small manipulative remarks mid-conversation, like, "It seems like your head isn't in the game," and it would immediately make me question myself. I began observing how he would try to control someone, and when they weren't doing what he wanted them to do, he would complain to me about it and say that he had no idea what they were doing and how they would always seem to undermine him. I started catching him in lies, and I watched how he would change the victims of his game and take time going through all of us as if we were waiting for him to tap on our head and say, "Goose." Then I knew it was my turn. I would know exactly what type of mood he was in just by the way he walked into the office. I called it the unraveling. I'd leave his office feeling sick and also wondering if he was just losing his mind. I began noticing repeating numbers. 111, 222, 333, 444, 555. I would not only see them when glancing at my phone, but I saw them in many different places, like receipts, the number of likes on a social post, timestamps on messages, price labels at the grocery store, the weather forecast. Why do I just inherently know that these are angel numbers and signs? My intuition? I immediately knew that it was communication, language. I was also having psychic experiences. Once, when I was home alone, I heard someone call my name as I was walking into the kitchen. "Jane." I spun my head. "Hello? Is someone here?" I walked around the house, outside to the backyard, and all was quiet. No neighbors outside looking for me. Strange. I must have imagined it. One weekend, my husband was outside grilling, and I was standing at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables. I felt someone blow on the back of my neck. I immediately stiffened, turned my head as fast as I could. No one was there. Oh my God, what was that? It gave me the chills and the creeps. I quickly grabbed my sage smudge stick, lit it, and smoked out the house. When my husband came inside, I told him what happened. I began telling him about all of my experiences now, with the repeating numbers, hearing someone calling my name but no one there, and I told him about that day, years ago, when I had a visit from an archangel. And then the lights above us flickered. We laughed, said, "Nah." I had called the head of HR and explained to her the behavior and the treatment that my manager was expressing to me, and also reported the treatment that I witnessed him doing to others. It brought me back to a time when I worked for a supplement supply company, and my manager would try to intimidate me by saying similar things that would make me question myself. She ended up getting fired for calling a team meeting and telling us all that we were going to lose our jobs and that we should start looking for roles elsewhere and how we could give each other referrals. Later that day, I was called into the HR's office, and the CEO was sitting there, and as soon as I walked in, he saw the look on my face. He immediately said, don't worry, you're not in trouble, and you're not getting fired." They proceeded to tell me that it was all lies and she had already been let go that same day. Prior to that time, when I worked at a spa in Concord, the owner found out I was taking continuing ed classes for makeup artistry, and she didn't like it. She felt threatened by it for some reason. As she was scolding me, she stuck her finger in my face while yelling at me and physically backing me into a corner. As I was giving a client a pedicure, she leaned over and whispered in my ear, "If you're not careful, I'll let Ready Labor know you're coming," threatening my job. Why did I feel like a constant target? Was it me? I learned back then that in order for someone to make themselves feel better, they intimidate and threaten someone else, create conflict as a way to get someone to submit to their plan. It didn't seem like HR was doing anything about it. The days rolled forward and nothing changed. It only became worse. Some of the team members began coming to me, looking for guidance, how to handle it all. I said, please reach out to HR so that your experience can go on record. Secondly, it has nothing to do with you or me or anyone else on this team. We have done nothing wrong, and he is manipulating and trying to control things that he can't. He is projecting his own feelings of his inadequacy and shame onto us. I had already acquired many tools by this time, tools that I was using to tackle whatever I found underneath my lid. And as I continued to find and repair the broken pieces, I was able to see the same broken pieces in others. I shared whatever tools I learned with them, letting them know to always follow their intuitive nudges. Your gut is always right. Don't ignore it. If something felt wrong or off, then it was. Trust it. Becoming self-aware means that we understand that we make up stories in our minds. Some of us ruminate in loops. And if these loops are of our wounds and unresolved trauma, then that is what we communicate and project onto others. Recognizing and then reframing is the healing part. I'm not angry that my current husband has left laundry in the dryer. I'm angry over that one traumatic day in the past when my ex-husband was abusive. It's not the present time. It's not what's happening now. My husband is not my ex-husband. What we love the most about camping is that it allows us to experience sleeping beneath the tall pines, listening to the flow of the river, watching the bats flying overhead at dusk, and the hoots of the owls at night brings an instant calmness to my energy. Something magical happens when we are in nature. Most of us are unconscious to some simple facts, such as we, humans, are just like any other animal species inhabiting the earth. We forget that we came from the earth and that we are still connected to her. Humans are just one of over 8 million species that inhabit the earth. We underestimate and become so caught up in our daily lives and struggles that we're unconscious of our natural connection to nature and how grounding it is to our energy. We grabbed our cups of coffee and walked through some bushes to the riverbank, and on our way back to our site, we noticed we had walked through an elk's den. We saw where they made their beds with evergreen branches and soft mounds of dirt. We also saw their bathroom area across a small path. After spending a couple nights there, it was time to move on. We packed up our things, locked down the camper, and headed north to the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. After visiting the park and looking down into the canyon and the majestic beauty of it all, I wondered, why are we all working our asses off to pay mortgages and utilities when we have the choice of being connected to Mother Earth instead? I guess so we don't have to hunt for food and make clothes out of animal skins. As we were leaving the park, we had to find a place to camp, and we decided that it would feel good to take a shower someplace, as it had been a few days. We found a small place along the Cimarron River just outside the canyon, and without any other options around that area to shower, and barely a cell signal, we decided to pull in. It was a tiny, family-owned working farm, and they only had a few sites, but each site backed up to the river. There was a herd of sheep across the river, and the sun was beginning to set, casting sparkles along the wake of the current. The old buildings had sagging roofs and creaky old wooden doors. I walked into the small building where the shower was located. There were 3 or 4 large freezers and piles of textiles, blankets, clothes everywhere, and a washing machine and dryer. There was a long table with piles of stuff on it, and as I turned the corner around the table to the bathroom, I was feeling Jason Voorhees vibes. The bathroom was completely enclosed, with a small toilet and a small shower stall. No air in here. The small hook and eye lock didn't work. Okay, I hope nobody walks it. The tile floor of the compact shower stall had a 3-inch threshold, and it was filling up with dirty, soapy water. I was grateful I had my shower shoes. As I walked back to our campsite, my husband asked me how the shower was. I said it was creepy and dirty. Watch out for Jason in a hockey mask. As my hunger for enlightenment continued, and becoming more aware of signs and synchronicities around me, I found myself leaning into my intuition more. I would feel nudges as something would catch my eye while scrolling along TikTok. Books, Dr. Chatterjee podcasts, Dr. Gabor Mate. Dr. Gabor Mate is a Canadian physician and best-selling author who specializes in addiction and early childhood development. He speaks openly about his relationships with his wife and children, and how his behavior as a parent, and how he unconsciously passed down generational trauma, and how it affected the conditioning and programming of his own children. I began to understand the science behind our brains, which was helping me to reframe the scenarios that would ruminate in my mind. The situation at work was continuing to spiral downward. After one busy day in the office, it imploded. His behavior that day seemed manic, having us all in a meeting room, talking about the ending of eras. And now he wasn't sure what was going to happen to our team. What if we were all laid off? What would we all do instead? Is that what's going to happen? Someone asked. He ignored the question. I felt compelled to notify HR for the 3rd time. They said they would investigate. Everyone in the office was on edge, walking on eggshells, trying desperately to mind our tongues, trying to avoid any type of conflict. It didn't seem like the company was doing much. Not much they can do from Europe, I guess. My visions, feelings, and hearing voices seemed to be getting louder. My husband picked me up one day after work and brought me to a local metaphysical store. I was immediately drawn to the bookshelves. I bought a couple of books about spirit guides and angels, and another about the mysterious language of angel numbers and numerology, and a tarot deck. It had been years since I had last picked up a tarot deck, as I had lost mine in the many moves I had over the last decade. I already knew that with the tarot, I could use that as a method of communication with my own spirit guides. I knew that they were reaching out to me with things like flickering lights, moving knives on the large magnetic bar, making a loud, distinct sound. Impossible. Hearing whispers as I would begin to wake up in the stream of consciousness between our dreams and awake. I made an appointment for a psychic reading ASAP. I went back to that metaphysical store and met with the owner and psychic. I told her that I was stuck in a work situation that I couldn't seem to find my way out of. I had been applying to so many jobs and roles and reaching out to my network, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't find a new job. I just wanted out of that environment. It didn't seem the company cared at all. I lost all trust in leadership, and it felt like maybe I was being forced to stick it out for some reason. It felt like punishment. The universe never punishes, only shows us what we need to heal within ourselves so that we can grow our own consciousness and wake up. I asked her about the visions of people and the wolf. She said they were my ancestors, Celtic and indigenous American shamans, and the wolf was a totem. I remained silent, absorbing it all. She recommended I begin reflective journaling and gave me some meditative exercises to show me how to protect my energy and also how to connect to the earth and release energy that wasn't my own. She said I was opening up psychically and that this would happen quickly for me, like riding a bike. I left with some validation and confidence that whatever was happening, I wasn't going crazy. It was real, and it was time not only to trust it, but to lean into it. I began pulling cards for myself daily. I gained knowledge by looking up each card's meaning, and I learned as I went. I came to the complete understanding that the universe has its own language and communication pathways, and how they were all connected. The tarot, numerology, astrology, the medicine wheel, and others are all part of a universal language that allows us to communicate with energy and the spiritual realm. The suits in the tarot represent each element in astrology and the medicine wheel, and each number the card represents numerology. The major arcana, the fool's journey through the awakening process, our astrological birth chart, is our life's roadmap. All we have to do is learn the language. I'd pull the Five of Wands, changes and challenges ahead in career. It would always happen and be true. While on a walk one day, I imagined the term light worker. What the fuck is a light worker? Hey Google, what is a light worker? A light worker is someone who chooses to live their life in a way that helps others and the planet. They are often described as being sensitive, compassionate, and in tune with their soul. Light workers can be found in many different roles, including teachers, writers, healers, healthcare workers, and so many more. We managed to make it through the night at what we dubbed the Crystal Lake Campground in Cimarron, Colorado, and decided to make our way back east to settle in the Twin Lakes area. The drive along Highway 50 to Gunnison was beautiful, and I was instantly grateful to be able to live in such a beautiful part of the world. We were winding our way around the lakes to find a dispersed camping spot and found the perfect spot on a hillside, overlooking the lakes on one side and then nestled into the mountains on the other. Because we were dispersed and had no bathroom facilities in our camper, we had to designate a spot about 50 feet away behind some bushes and dig a hole. We settled in and took the dogs for a walk, and we both felt instant peace. It's nearly impossible to sleep past dawn while camping, and just before sunrise, when I opened the door, I saw a deer. Deer is the earth element, grounding. I instantly knew we were in the perfect spot. It was true soul food. Just because I had quit drinking and began to learn how we are all projecting our wounds onto others and was learning how to change the thoughts in my own mind didn't mean I was just miraculously healed. It's a true process that takes consistency over time, and once you think you've healed a part of you, it reaches out from the shadows. My husband and I had spent many months the previous year unsure of our path forward and both wanting to quit the relationship, until I decided to quit drinking and focus on connecting to myself. We had to relearn how to be in a relationship. Not only was I learning about myself and connecting to myself, I was learning about how to be myself while constantly reframing my brain, letting go of thoughts that weren't my own. We had to relearn how to navigate conflict resolution. We still both had times where we were anxious or avoidant, knee-jerk reactions of casting blame instead of taking accountability. These old conditions and programs of ours would still surface, but now, without the mask of alcohol on, I had to look in the mirror and see what I really looked like. We had to learn to be vulnerable, throw down our swords and shields, and meet somewhere in the middle. Once, he brought up a conversation about how much I was growing and changing and that he was afraid that he would be left behind. That he knew when one person grows and the other doesn't, meant that a breakup would be inevitable. He was afraid that I would leave him behind like some dying plant. I said, "What makes you think that my personal growth is ahead of yours? I feel like I'm trying to catch up to you." There would be times when I could barely choke out the words to him while just trying to transparently communicate a mistake I made. He stood there and patiently waited for me to speak and said, "It's okay. Take your time." And when I was able to finally communicate it, nothing bad happened. He said, "Okay, let's figure it out together." Another time it would be him trying to choke out whatever words he needed to say, and I made it a point to give him the space to speak and listen without interrupting him, while I heard in my ear, "Help him heal." We made promises to each other that we would make a conscious effort to break old patterns and build a new foundation for our relationship. We both acknowledged that our first reaction to any type of conflict was to leave, and that neither one of us actually wanted to leave. We agreed that everything is figure-outable and solvable, and we made a new commitment. We updated from the original version. Foundation 2.0 began. Towards the fall, my workplace was worse than ever. My manager had finally left, but there were so many major gaps in communication with headquarters. With so many unanswered questions, I was beginning to suspect that when my former manager said the company was going to get rid of the entire channel on that fateful day, he must have been right, unlike the last time when my director was fired the same day. And although the company consistently denied it, things just stopped happening. It felt as if we were ghosted, and in some bizarro corporate dystopian future, where we all knew that we were being gaslighted, but then we'll end up being surprised when it actually happens. I had this inner knowing and sense that this was an excellent example of abandonment. The exact childhood wound that I needed to heal. They finally let him go and replaced him with someone else who wasn't from or located in the United States. So when I caught the new manager in a lie, I called them out on it. It was 48 hours of the silent treatment before I got a call. I was being let go. As the call was ending, I said, "I hope you have the day you deserve," and I hung up. I could see how I was reacting from my unconscious abandonment wound and not from my emotionally conscious aware self, and I said it anyway. During those days camping in the Rocky Mountains, we watched the sunrise over the lakes, listened to the whispers of the wind, birds singing, and looking in awe at the sparkles of sunshine on the lake. I sat and sipped my morning coffee while my husband fried eggs, bread, and potatoes in a skillet over in the open fire. Each evening we would sip hot chocolate and watch the sunset behind the snowy mountain peaks. This exact experience, feeling it on a soul level, is why we moved to Colorado. We both had felt called to Colorado, each in our own way, and here we were, living the dream of our spirit. The experiences I was having at work actually became fuel for my fire, my desire to learn about myself. The universe will always put the exact thing in front of us that we need to heal within ourselves, our mirror. I'm incredibly grateful for that uneasy, trying time. It encouraged me to not just peek under the cover, but to take it off completely. I burned the old stained blanket and spineless book. I didn't need them anymore. I added universal language, books, tarot, and intuition into my tool belt, ready for what was next to come. This concludes episode 6. Thank you for listening. Please follow, subscribe, and share. If my story resonates with you, it will resonate with someone you know. Thank you.